Hello water signs Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. Welcome to the Aquarius full moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Cancer rising, welcome to your horoscope for the full moon in Aquarius, happening on the 2nd of August, which is a Wednesday, at 4:33 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So for your full moon ritual, you can do it on the Tuesday night or the Wednesday night, or you can get up super early on the Wednesday and enjoy the moon at its fullest at 4:30, but that's up to you. Now we're going to be delving into your 8th house this time around, Cancer, and the 8th can be a place of kind of potential difficulty. There can be some real somber emotions that come up in the 8th, and it's where we kind of develop a relationship with grief. It's where our resources are intertwined and interwoven with that of the other. And sometimes things like inheritance or things like taxes can sort of appear in the 8th house. There's a real intensity to the emotions involved. And so we're going to be really super beautiful and gentle with you this full moon. The sign Aquarius is represented in the tarot by the star, which is one of my favorite cards. And we've got to remember that Aquarius has nothing to hide, that Aquarius has an incredibly intelligent, brilliant mind, and they use that intelligence for the benefit of other people. Sometimes with folks with placements in the 8th house, it can show up in a lot of kind of beautiful, helpful, healing sorts of ways. So if your Sun or your Venus or whatever is in the 8th house, there might be a predilection for you to be able to go the distance with folks that are dealing with really difficult emotions or coming to terms with loss in their life. And so you can see that that's the kind of major vibe we're working with at this full moon. It's not especially easy. It's worth it. And a spotlight in this part of your life might dredge up some stuff that hasn't been looked at in a while. Now, I want to do a little bit of aftercare because I know full well that the Mars and Saturn opposition that happened last week, that I detailed in my last horoscope in preparation for, has occurred now, and it did bring some pretty intense emotions and some conflict and some moments that were very difficult to deal with. And if we think about the energy of Mars and we think about the sort of violence perhaps or the intensity that Mars can bring in opposition with Saturn, who brings restriction and boundary and life lessons, the way that this is manifested for people that I care about in my life was quite literal and quite confronting. And I wish that in some ways they didn't have to go through things like that. And I don't wish sort of intensity like that on anybody. What we can do with the aftercare of that is recognize that this moment has sort of moved through. So we're going to be kind of feeling its reverberations, but also the planet Mercury, who brings extra information, extra intelligence, is taking the place of Mars. So we'll be in opposition with Saturn. That is to say that there's going to be some revelation or some extra information, some extra conversation that can be had around that blunt force that happened. It may have dredged up some stuff. It may have been confronting for you to have this happen. And the best thing that we can do is really recognize that Mercury is here, and Mercury is really happy in Virgo. Okay, so Virgo for you is your 3rd house, which is your house of the goddess. So it's your village, your local environment, your neighborhood. So there's going to be some extra information that will flesh out, or we'll be able to work through some of the more difficult stuff that came up with that blunt force trauma of Mars and Saturn. So there's that. We're working with aftercare. We're working with kind of moving through or moving with the change of conflict or of trauma. And we're also going to recognize that Mars is still in Virgo, so still in your house of the goddess, of your village, your local environment, but has now formed a very supportive aspect, a trine with Jupiter in Taurus, which is your 11th house of friendship, community, and good fortune. So perhaps that will be an extra support for you at this time, Cancer, that you can look to your friendships for a bit of optimism and a bit of a brighter light, a brighter guiding light to help heal some of this in the afterglow, the aftercare. So let's focus back in on Aquarius and your 8th house. This is where the grief, this is where the sort of the intensity of emotion might show up. And the card that we're looking at is the 5 of Swords. So the moon is at the 5 of Swords, as it were, of the zodiac. And this card talks all about confrontation. It talks about intellect and truth being weaponized. It talks about a fight or a sparring match. And this could really be internal as well, Cancer. This is a card that tells us about the decision to drop it and to stop weaponizing the truth, or stop sort of using intellect as a weapon, and to set it down and to move on from this tension. You can see these 2 folks in the background. They're like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm not engaging in this stuff, so I'm moving on. And the person in the foreground is collecting all of the swords, but they're not a victor, I wouldn't say. It's a bit pathetic. They're alone in this. So tense, but worth it, I think. And we can generate something from this, I think, Cancer. I'm going to get you some intuitive tarot. I'm going to remind you that Venus has stationed retrograde and will be existing in your 2nd house of your resources, your money, your ability to grow, and how you share that, how you spread that around, how you, how do you plant in your garden. Venus is there for the next month, so I think they'll be heading off in sometime in September, I think. So maybe use that as like a refocus, whatever that sort of shock to the system was. Head back to the garden, head back to the sort of the parts of life where you feel fertile, that you feel that you can grow and you feel that you can get stuck into and sort of develop something healthy. So I'm going to get you some tarot. Another thing probably to say as well, sorry to labour this reading with a lot of astro speak, but it's quite a tense month, so we've got a lot of things to explain. Another thing that happened, actually it's on the day that I'm recording these, which I'm working through, is that Pluto retrograde in your 7th house of relationships. Pluto, the planet that destroys and regenerates and births anew, has just squared the dragon's head in Aries. So there might be some fear about the future. There might be some fear about your legacy. There might be some fear about your kind of most public, visible parts of you, and the ever-evolving nature of your relationships. There might be perhaps some things that were said to you in friendship or lovership, or closeness, that is affecting your confidence or affecting your capacity to look hopeful in the future. That's going to pass in time, but it's important just to note and to register those fears too. You're not alone in that fear, Cancer. I think there's a lot of folks that are quite fearful at the moment for what's to become of them. We've got to continue to work and keep that motor running, and that can be really exhausting when we're using the crud in the bottom of the tank. So yeah, know that Pluto in the final degrees of your 7th house too is like, that's I'm sure that you probably can look around and look at your, your relationships in Capricorn and look at the evolution or the sort of the reconfiguration, the restructure of some of those relationships too. Not everything is thrown in the bin. So look to that kind of, how do you relate to people now? How do you relate to your clients now? How do you relate to your lovers now? That's very different from before. You've gone through a metamorphosis in the way that you relate in regard to folks. So rather than that being something to be fearful about your future, look to it as a positive, maybe, that you sort of operate on you dance to a beat of a different drum these days. I got the 5 of Cups. I got the King of Pentacles. And I got the Emperor. That's really funny. The 5 of Cups is a card of grief. This is big 8th house energy, I would probably say. The 5 shows up when we miss what's not here anymore, when we long for what used to exist. And that could be a relationship structure, or that could be a state of mind. I find that sometimes when I'm doing a reading for myself, the 5 of Cups can show up when I'm feeling worried about my state of mind, that I won't be able to get back to a place of happiness, that I'm too laden with sorrow, that I'm too melancholy, that I'm too full of grief. The best way to work with the 5 of Cups, though, is not to fight it, is to sort of really roll with that current. So if this trauma that happened with Mars and Saturn's bringing some stuff up for you, Cancer, then allow yourself the moment, allow yourself the audience with the 5 of Cups. It's okay. It's going to be all right. That's the surefire way to a breakdown in the future, is by stuffing the 5 of Cups down and not looking at it, not feeling the grief, not sort of existing in the 8th house. Maybe this moon is coming at this time because there is a bit of latent grief that you need to process. And you can probably feel safe enough to do that in the company of the moon. Big, bright, full moon for you to lament if you need to, Cancer. It's all right. I got the Emperor, which is Aries. That's very interesting that we brought up your 10th house of your legacy, where you wish to feel large and in charge, where you wish to feel the sort of, to be the master of your domain and to feel capable. And I think that that's something that some of us are frightened of, that we're not capable, and that if anyone finds out our vulnerability, or finds out that we're sort of, making it up as we go along, that's a big fear. But I reckon that it's good to remember that every single one of these major secrets, in fact, every single card in the tarot, is all inside of us too. And so this Emperor, this boss, that's you can be that. And you don't have to, the connotation of boss, I understand, is different for everyone. What about the leader? You can be the leader in this life, and it's something to be fostered. Leadership skills, because it's not the only thing. And maybe if you're thinking about times in your life where you had terrible leaders, then maybe that would have you reluctant to be one. Maybe that's something that's showing up for you with this square with Pluto in the dragon's head. But then we have the King of Pentacles, which is someone who has an ever-ending, ever-arching reach of like a vegetable garden that's like miles long. Everything you could possibly want or wish or desire for is in the realm of the King of Pentacles. And they've got cash to spare. They've got cash to flash. What do you need, darling? Do you want to stay over? All of that stuff is the King of Pentacles. They take care of those that they love. They take care of their environment, their neighborhood, those around them. There's a real kind of nurturing yeah, like there's a feeling of like being provided for in the company of the King of Pentacles. And I think that that can definitely be a part of you too, Cancer. You're a nurturer. You're going to be a nurturer. That's going to have something to do with your legacy too, what you do leave behind. Part of your Emperor is the King of Pentacles, I would probably say. That sort of generosity is something that you'll be remembered for. So maybe at this full moon in Aquarius, allow this sort of grief moment, allow the Five of Cups to do its work. Walk away from the Five of Swords, walk away from that attack of the mind, and let the light in your 8th house do its work. Cry the tears if you need to, Cancer. I love you. If you are still here with me, throw me a star in the comments, please, in honor of Aquarius and the star card. That would be really lovely. If you'd like your birth chart read by me, you can head to umaruby.com and I can do that for you. Here's an example of what you're going to receive. In my readings, I use the tarot and I use your astrology and my little drawing that I've made right here. So if you've been thinking about getting a reading from me for a while, then yeah, I'd encourage you to do so. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be back with you in 2 weeks and we'll discuss the new moon in Leo, which will be great for your values, your cash, your sense of self, where Venus is. We've got a new moon with Venus, so that'll be really lovely. I think we'll get to enjoy that one. So take good care of yourself, Cancer, as you always take care of everyone else. Heal those wounds. That blunt shock is something that we can resolve. There's more information that we can work with at this time. Take care. Bye. Hello, Scorpio rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the full moon in Aquarius, happening on Wednesday, the 2nd of August at 4:33 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So Tuesday night's great. Wednesday night's great. If you wanted to get up super early and see the moon exactly full, then you'll need to get up at 4:33 a.m., which you're welcome to. Now, I want to have a little chat about some aftercare. I think might be really important to go through after the last horoscope, after the horoscope that I gave 2 weeks ago, and the Mars and Saturn opposition that was felt indeed. That conflict, that abrupt tension was really felt by a lot of folks that I care about, and it's probably good to remind you, Scorpio, that we can look forward to some aftercare after that potentially difficult moment. And also we're going to have a look at the moon too. We're going to really kind of appreciate what we have in Aquarius. So for you, Scorpio, Aquarius rules your 4th house of your home, privacy, sense of belonging, and in some way your ancestral lines too. And so if we think about a full moon as being a spotlight, then there's a overemphasis, or there's like a grand reveal in the 4th house, the most private part of your chart. And so I'd probably do some thanks, some little I'd probably feather my nest in a really fresh way. I'd be grateful for what I have, Scorpio, at this time. I would feel the safety of my home environment at this time. Now let's go back to that aftercare because it was a little bit sticky. So Mars and Saturn were in opposition, and that was facing off between your sense of community and belonging and friendship, and also your sense of creative expression, the way that you see the world. And so Saturn is going to be in this area for you for the next bit of time, the next few years. We've spoken about this as far as we can work with the boundary of Saturn for you to create something really tangible and substantial in your 5th house of creativity. However, there was some blowback, I think, from the 11th house and this could have been external in terms of there was something that happened on the world stage that shook you a little bit, that had you really upset. It could have been something in your friendship groups. Maybe there was a bone of contention or a big fight that occurred and that you've had to kind of go over it and process that. The aftercare that I'm talking about is Mercury's entry into Virgo. So Mars has moved along. They're still in Virgo. In fact, they've actually formed a supportive relationship, earth sign to earth sign, with Taurus in your 7th house of intimate relationships. So you might feel a little bit of glowing support from your intimate ones, from ones that the private relationships that are really important to you might be able to provide some coolant for whatever happened in the 11th house that's more sort of communal. Also, Mercury has just taken up position in opposition with Saturn in your 5th house. So there's going to be some extra information that presents itself to you at like 7 a.m. after this, or probably, at lunchtime on the same day as this full moon. So hopefully, in our little preparations for full moon ritual and being thankful for what we have at home, being thankful for our family, our chosen family, the relationships in our life that make us feel like we're at home. We can be grateful for them and put them in the spotlight. And there's going to be some further conversation about what was it that happened, what occurred, what felt like sort of like blunt force trauma that sort of was like, whoa, that was really unexpected, that really shook me. How can we move from this state of shock? How can we move forward? Maybe there was a real argument with a community group, or there was something to do with like a community that you thought that you belonged to, that perhaps you're sort of second guessing that maybe you don't feel so welcome there anymore, or you don't feel that you want to be there anymore. That could be something that's coming up with this astrology. Something happened and it was really big, Scorpio, and it took a lot from you. And I think that for all of us, the lesson is a greater sense of sort of like boundary and a greater sense of self-love and self-conviction. It's affecting a lot of people that I care about, and it's shown up in many different manifestations, but the core essence of if there's going to be a lesson from this experience, the lesson is I've got to trust myself. I've got to trust myself more and trust my nous, my intuition. Trust that I know what's going on, that I can see it coming. I hope that everything's okay, Scorpio. I trust that it will be in time as well. So that's the astrology. So if we look back to your 4th house, which is home, privacy, roots, ancestry, your little nest. Aquarius, the sign, is a great innovator, and they do bring with them really kind of broad, inventive ideas for the future. So if there's something about your home environment that's really unconventional, Scorpio, or if there's something that you're kind of maybe building for the first time, maybe you come from a background that wasn't so stable, or you come from a very different system of roots and privacy, you live a different way perhaps from folks that came before you, then this would be a moon to really celebrate that sort of eccentricity of yours. I'm going to get you some intuitive tarot, I think, Scorpio. And do remind yourself that Venus is still in Leo. In your 10th house, Venus is bringing an extra helping of pleasure and of creativity and beauty to your public-facing life. to your legacy, what it is that you hope to leave behind as well. So that's a really lovely thing to remember. This is going to hold you in good company if this friction between your community and yourself grows, you know. Do trust that Mercury is going to be bringing with it further information to maybe further explain why this happened. I think that also we should remember that Mercury is going to station retrograde in Virgo at the end of August. So there's going to be an invitation to go over everything that we've learned from now until 3 weeks from now. We're going to be invited to go back over what we've learned. So this story kind of isn't over as well. It's not going to be something that wallops you from the side and then be like, okay, well, that was hard. That was really difficult. Now I've got to integrate that and move on. You're going to be asked to go over what it is that you did learn with that face-off with Mars and Saturn. And it's not to like make sure you don't make the same mistake again, but it's kind of like, what did you learn and what can you bring forward with you in your communal circles? I got 2 8s. So I got the 8 of Swords, the 8 of Cups, and the Knight of Swords. Yeah, it definitely talks about truth. We're definitely talking about truth. We're definitely talking about anxiety and the compulsion to run away. We are talking about something a little deeper than that too, Scorpio. Excuse me. We are talking about something a little deeper than that too, Scorpio. So the 8 of Swords is definitely a cage of the mind, and it's racked up anxiety. It's definitely multiple different scenarios that have sort of left residue in your inner world and possibly maybe affecting the way that you think about yourself too, or the way that you think about, you know, your perception of the outside world might be colored by that too. Always anxiety is something that I think about when I see the 8 of Swords. In comparison or in contrast with the 8 of Cups, this is an example of like a collection of emotional lessons that someone is brave enough to go out and to seek the next one. No matter what they've been through, I mean, not all of those cups are filled with something sweet. Some of it's quite difficult. But this person in this card is going out to seek out the next cup, to bring it back for their collection. They're not going to allow their anxiety to stop them in their tracks or to have them stationary or frightened. They're going to move with this. Whatever's happened, they're going to move with this, and they're going to develop themselves and their strength. The Knight of Swords is someone that doesn't mince words, that someone is really direct, and they bring to you a very enforced whoosh of truth. So maybe we've got this to look forward to. We could almost see Mercury maybe embodied in the Knight of Swords at this time. So if you wanted the timeline, if you wanted to really have something to rely on, if we're still reeling from Mars and Saturn last week, that conflict or that shock, I think shock's probably a really good word for it. If we want to work with that in timeline, we're going to have the full moon in Aquarius light up our 4th house of privacy at 4:30 a.m. And then at lunchtime, Mercury will take the place of Mars. So that Knight of Swords, extra intel, extra information will arrive at about lunchtime on the very same day. Now, as I said before, Mercury will station retrograde in Virgo. So whatever we learn or glean on this day, we're going to be asked to go over it again. We're going to be asked to look at this again and to really make sure that we got the translation right, that we understand. In regard to your 11th house, your sense of belonging, your sense of community, what folks you're rolling around with, perhaps what philosophies they hold dear and hold true, perhaps in contrast to what you believe in. That might be something that has occurred that has sort of shocked you, and you thought that you were in the company of like-minded individuals, and it turns out there was something perhaps a little bit more sinister sort of lurking below the surface, or an ideology that was ill-concealed. Yeah, or that was concealed until now. I keep on looking at that Five of Swords, you know, it's that feeling of like putting the swords down and moving on, walking away, dropping it. For folks that don't have a steady relationship with like a bloodline or with like tradition in the home, with like these lessons being passed down, or this sort of like fortress of support and this kind of safety net, as it were, life can just feel like you're riding on a bike with no brakes sometimes, especially when confronted with aggression, like, you know, Mars, confronted with that sort of shock to the system, that reality check. When this happens to folks that haven't sort of difficult relationship with their fourth house, this is when feelings of massive unsafety can start to show up. And that's when the Eight of Swords can really rear its head too, that anxiety. So I think let's first things first. Let's enjoy this full moon in Aquarius. Let's have that spotlight shine on our fourth house. Whatever you have, my darling, whatever home, the nest, your privacy looks like, as humble as it might be, whatever you've got to work with. And it could be also an internal feeling too, a feeling of being safe enough in my skin might be all that we can sort of work with at this full moon. But if that's all you've got to work with, honey, then I'm here to remind you that you are safe in your skin at this time. You're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. You're not ostracized. You're not shut out. This conflict is going to be resolved. Mercury is bringing the Knight of Swords on home with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There's more to this than you know. That's what I'll say, Scorpio. That's your reading. Intense. I wonder what's going to happen next. Golly. I hope that this is helpful for you, Scorpio. I'm looking at Chani's book right now. It's called You Were Born for This. She's one of my favorite authors on the subject. And her philosophy is that astrology is for radical self-acceptance. So we go to it and we use it to give ourselves a bit of context for what might be going on in our lives, and also a bit of a reprieve from the sort of habit of self-blame and self-flagellation too. If we feel that we sort of we're a part of a greater whole, then we can feel less alone and we can feel more supported and safer. So yeah, I hope that this is helpful. If you've tempted to get your birth chart read by me and you haven't already, here's an example of one that I prepared earlier for a lovely client. I draw them out too, so you get your reading, your tarot reading, and your chart as well in the package. So if that's something that you like, that you've been thinking about for a while, but you'd like to hear my perspective on your birth chart, then head to umaruby.com and book yourself a place with me. If you're still here, throw me a star in the comments, a star for my Northern Hemisphere friends. In honor of Aquarius, I'd love a star in the comments. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be with you in 2 weeks to discuss the new moon in Leo. I love you, Scorpio, and everything's going to be better than ever. You take care. Bye. Hello, Pisces rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the full moon in Aquarius, happening on Wednesday, the 2nd of August at 4:33 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So it's an early morning full moon. If you wanted to do your full moon rituals, you're most welcome to do it the night before on Tuesday before you go to bed, or you can indeed do it on Wednesday night too. If you'd like to get up extra specially early and see the moon exactly full at 4:30, then you can, but it will still be nice and juicy either side of that too. So we're going to take a little deep dive into your 12th house, Pisces, and this is something that's very hidden. This is something that's quite private, and this is where you've been doing all of that incredibly wonderful, magical inner work. If you've heard that phrase before, you know, I've got to do the work, I'm doing the inner work. This is where we do it. We do it in Aquarius, Pisces rising, we do it in our 12th house. And a full moon is like a spotlight. So it's kind of like an exclamation point on a period of time that has not been without its difficulty. That's absolutely for sure. And it's also a culmination, I might say, of some grand lessons that you've really been doing such a brilliant job at surmounting. And you've been developing this incredible relationship between your inner internal workings, your inner work, and your external work too. The outer environment, the physical nature of that. Venus is retrograde in your 6th house of repetition, of the body, of health. So I can really see that beautiful encouragement to beauty and to pleasure in your everyday waking life. I can see that this is going to be a fantastic Leo season for you, Pisces, to get back into friendship with the body, with the physical vessel, with the mundanity of the day. You're going to relish in it because Venus is there sprinkling the fairy dust, making everything a little bit more magical for you. Work is not a dirty word, and you've been working your ass off. And so what beautiful crescendo that we're experiencing right now, that your inner work is being celebrated at this full moon. It's been tough, and you've been doing such a beautiful job, and I'm very proud of you. Now, I want to do a little bit of aftercare because we did experience a real major blunt force trauma shock to our systems last week. If you remember my last horoscopes, and I was talking about the idea of Mars and Saturn being in opposition and the potential for grand friction or something really intense to occur in our lives, in our sense of self, Saturn and boundary, that we're working upon for the next couple of years, and developing a nice sort of rhythm and routine with Saturn in the 1st house and Mars in the 7th. So I'm going to go back to go forward, but Mars, the planet that does bring it with it sort of blunt force and sometimes anger, definitely conflict, they squared off with Saturn the 23rd, the 24th, I can't quite remember what date it was, last weekend. And this was a moment of incredible frustration, possibly, but there was a real moment of crisis that occurred with you and folks that you care about, your friends perhaps, folks that you take care of, the people that are near, the energies that are near to you. The aftercare that I can provide for you, Pisces rising, is that at this full moon, in fact a few hours after, maybe at lunchtime on the Wednesday, the planet Mercury is going to be taking Mars's place in opposition with Saturn. So if you can imagine, there's still this tug of war between your 1st and 7th house, but Mercury is very happy in Virgo, and Mercury brings with them extra information. So this might be extra conversation that you can have after this trauma, after this real difficulty. It might need some time to air out and to process before you get there, but Mercury will definitely bring extra information, perhaps stuff that you didn't know, or there'll be a chance for you to really be articulate and voice how this affected you and how this was inappropriate, or how this was really not what we needed to have happen. How you're going to stand up for yourself from now on. this is where we're going, Pisces, and I've been singing your praises. You're doing such a great job. What we're going to work with is this energy of Mercury, extra information, extra intelligence in Virgo for the next couple of months. So at the end of August, on the 24th, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Virgo. So whatever we're learning now about how we wish to be treated, what we will not put up with any longer, how we are going to operate in relationships using the boundary of Saturn, using that incredible magical boundary that's being fostered right there. Everything that we're learning now, we're not going to learn and put our hands in our pockets and whistle away into the sunset. We're going to be reminded of this. When Mercury stations retrograde on the 24th of August, this is going to come up again for us. And we're going to need to go over everything that we think that we've learned about boundary and about a sense of self and the other and a new way of operating, either in business relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, how we're going to state our boundaries, how we're going to state our the necessity for those things, and also voice our concerns when they arise, rather than going through a period of time where there's a continual sort of slow build-up of, crud or bacteria of an unhealthy relationship. We're going to nip it and hold it off at the pass. But Mercury will sort of take the lead on that, Pisces rising. So on the 24th of this month, we're going to be asked to review what it is that we think we've learned in order to move forward. So that's that. I hope that that little description of the astrology can give you a sense of acceptance. Perhaps if it was a bit tough, over this last week, if there was some real conflict or real trauma that sort of brought itself to the surface, I hope that this astrology is a way for you to feel a little less alone in that, and not to sort of explain it away, but just to give yourself a bit of context about what's going on and recognize that your life potentially can mirror sometimes the planetary configurations, and that not everything was for nothing. Whew. So another thing to think about is that Mars, the one that started the whole thing, is still in Virgo, is still in your 7th house of relationships. However, they've moved to 13 degrees of Virgo and have formed an exact trine with Jupiter in Taurus, in your 3rd house of the goddess of privacy and secret ritual. And so what I want to do is show you these tarot cards that are speaking to Mars, which is the 9 of Pentacles right now. So there's sort of a drive to develop a greater sense of independence. There's a drive to develop a working ethic or a relationship with work that has you feeling that you can provide for yourself and feel really strong and stand on your own 2 feet and sort of bask in the glow of that hard work too. This is what Mars is amping you up for. I reckon that if Mars could talk, they'd probably want to maybe apologize for the blunt force trauma that was maybe experienced with the face-off with Saturn in the boundary. But now they've moved on and they're in relationship with Jupiter in your house of the goddess, which is the 6 of Pentacles. So what I'm kind of sensing here, Pisces rising, is that you get by with a little help from your friends, and you get by with a articulation of how you've been feeling, and that there's nothing that's too I was going to say there's, you can talk about anything. However, Saturn in Pisces is reminding you of the boundary. So perhaps, in fact, not everybody has access to your intimacy or to your tenderness, your vulnerability. Perhaps not everybody has access to your kindness, This is something that is a really great lesson. And this isn't to say, going to clam up and shut up and become a shut-in and not let anybody in. Not at all. But I think that hopefully whatever you've experienced this last week is going to be a great sort of example of the preciousness of your vulnerability, and in fact how you do operate in relationships, how you do operate with other people, and the vastness of your generosity. Perhaps this is not available to all and sundry. This isn't available to everyone. Perhaps from now on you'll maybe use or harness in on your intuition, your intuitive powers, and call a spade a spade. Perhaps if there's a dynamic that doesn't feel very trustworthy, you won't engage in it like you did before. It's hard for a Pisces rising because there is such a limitlessness to your love, But maybe this moment has been a good example for you to mirror back to you as well, to show you, be like, look what you've done. Like, you did everything that you could. You're such a kind person, and you are going to continue to do that. You're not going to change yourself, but you're only going to do it with folks that give it back. I'm going to get you some intuitive tarot, I think, Pisces, and then I'm going to call it a night. So yeah, for the moon, this is all inner work, isn't it? This is 12th house. This is the work that you're doing now. You're actively engaged in self-healing, self-reflection, self-love. You've been doing such a great job, and the astrology has been quite hectic and quite murky over this last month, and that passes too. This is the thing. We look at the astrology, we look at the tarot, it all does this. If you're feeling especially fraught at the moment or in anguish emotionally, I got you, and it's not going to last forever. It will move along. But this is what this beautiful Aquarius full moon is offering you too. It's like the chance to continue that beautiful inner work. It's very brave what you're doing, Pisces rising. Incredibly brave. Not everyone would be able to do what you're doing. Some people can't. Some people close up. Some people numb it out, Sometimes we numb it out as Pisces rising, that's okay too. You don't have to feel that you have to flagellate yourself for your coping mechanisms. But if part of your inner work is kind of assessing your coping mechanisms, then that I can be really supportive of too. And you can look and you can see how circumstance has shown you that not everybody is entitled to your beautiful generosity, because some people don't respect it. Four of Swords, the Hermit, funny. And the Magician. Yeah, so this is deep rest, my darling. This is deep, deep, deep rest, contemplation. Take this time. You don't have to act on anything right now, and you don't have to make something out of nothing. You don't have to cook anything up right now. Really recognize how safe you are. Recognize that the tarot is really, really telling you to rest. The Four of Swords, the thoughts are hung up on the wall for the night. That's deep sleep. That's deep physical rest, because the mind can exhaust us. The mind can have us wrung out if we stay up there for too long or forever, if that's our continual modus operandi, is to be wrapped up in the mind, then our body is exhausted, and our body can't, we can't live to our full potential because we've just been thinking all night long. The Hermit, Virgo, 7th house, but also it's that moment of actually extracting yourself from the social milieu, from the responsibilities of life, actively extracting yourself from relationships that would harm you, actively extracting yourself to contemplate and to go over in your mind, to receive the lessons too. This is quite a spiritual card. This is something that doesn't happen for everyone, and this is something that it's available to everyone, but not everyone has the courage to take this moment. And you're doing that, Pisces rising. You're doing that right now. So take the moment, open the portal, really kind of try and if you're not quite sure what, spirit or the angels, whoever you feel that's in your support, if you're not quite sure what they're trying to tell you, then you can be direct. I always say that if you're doing tarot for yourself and there's a card that you don't understand, pull another one. Get them to clarify. What do you mean by the Five of Wands? Give me another one. There's something on its way to you, Pisces. And this has... God, I don't like to use that language of like, everything happens for a reason, babe, love and light. Life isn't that simple. In fact, that's quite disrespectful of the trauma at hand. So I'm not going to say that everything happens for a reason and this too shall pass. As much as people that say that their heart's in the right place and they really want you to feel better, sometimes you will feel better when you're ready. You don't have to hurry up and get it done. But if you have this time, then you can seclude yourself for a moment. Make sure that your nearest and dearest, and this is where this Jupiter influence is coming back in, the folks that you know love you, you let them know what's going on. You can also ask for a healthy boundary too. You can become absolutely fine. I just need this time to think and reflect. And we've got the Magician because you're about to light the match. It almost in some ways as if this is something that you've been waiting for. A chance to start again, or a chance to really open up that portal from the Hermit. Really get some magic happening, Pisces. Inner work ain't easy. And this full moon is here to congratulate you, darling. 12th house, Aquarius, full moon, inner work, hidden work, private work. You've been doing it. That's powerful. If you're still here with me, put me a star in the comments, won't you? In honor of the star in tarot, in honor of Aquarius. Throw a little star in the comments for me. If you'd like your birth chart read by me and you've been thinking about it for a while but you haven't gotten around to it, here's a little example of what they look like. I draw them by hand. So in your reading, we'll be looking at this chart or a chart similar to this, and we'll be reading the tarot. You were given some tarot cards at birth, and I can't wait to describe to you which ones they are. And there'll be cards that will stay with you, I think, as you move forward, and you'll always be able to refer back to them and learn more about them. But if that's something that you wanted to do, head to umaruby.com and you can book yourself a reading there with me. You can send me some tip money at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be back with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about Leo. We're going to talk about rhythm, repetition, the body beautiful, self-respect, self-pride, self-actualization. It's going to be lovely. I can't wait for it, Pisces rising. You're a champion. You've done really well. I'm super proud of you. You take it easy. Bye.